Hi there, my name is Anita Tomecki. I work as a human behaviour expert, and have the pleasure of being on the online prosperity show today. Thank you all for watching. I hope you get some great insights from this. We're going to be talking all the way through my childhood, how I came to become a human behaviour expert, how I ended up living on Bondi Beach, and how I work with people to help them to understand how they run their own mind and to ask themselves the right questions to get the answers that they never knew were deep within them. Enjoy. Thank you.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, your number one place where coaches, consultants, and business owners come to learn the real stories behind success and strategies that actually work and practice. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today I'm really excited about the nosy guest that we're about to bring onto the show. Now, Anita, how are you doing today?
That's the best intro I've ever had. The nosy guest. I love it. You've been doing your research.
Well, you see, when you're having, very good guests coming on your show, you at least look up a thing or two about who they've been. But
who's the nosy one?
But I think you did a lot more looking up from what I've heard ever since age 10. So now I'm a little bit, very careful about what I'm going to be saying, because you're going to be like, that's not it. So there you go. Now, for those that are watching right now, as I've mentioned, our guest today has been called nosy since before she was 10 years old. And thankfully, Anita Tomecki has actually turned that detective level curiosity into a superpower. Some people would have just been like, oh, I can't deal with it, but she's actually using it to her own benefit. So today, as a human behavior expert, speaker, and coach, she actually helps people uncover the blind spots they don't even know they had, so they can actually finally create the life that they've been longing for. So you might be telling her, I'm not quite sure if I'm able to do that. Don't worry, Anita will ask you the right questions, and she will actually find what you've been doing or what you had for breakfast, from what I heard, and tell you what not to do. So she came from a history of managing properties in London for over a decade, to then suddenly waking up on Bondi Beach surrounded by coaches, to now she runs transformational workshops and one-to-one coaching sessions across Australia. So Anita has lived, and shifted through it all. I'm just surprised about the whole waking up at Bondi Beach, as if she just surfaced as a fish that just came out of the water. So we're going to be hearing all about that in this episode, and we're going to unpack her journey, her methods, and also surprising truths that she's learned about why humans behave the way they do. I mean, for somebody who's a nosy neighbor, she will be telling us exactly what we're doing wrong, and I can't wait to hear what she's discovered along the way. So we also get into the invisible lessons that will definitely leave you questioning yourself in the best way possible. And I'm hoping that you're going to stick around, because I don't feel like this is just going to be yet another podcast episode, but just a mini documentary into asking the right questions that can actually change everything. Now, Anita, I could go on and talk about things that I'm not even qualified to even rumble on about. So property management in London, were you just the one who's looking at people's windows just to see if they say they are the right people living in that house, or if they have other borders in it? I mean, I'm just very skeptical here now.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, it was one of those jobs where for 10 years, when people asked me what I did, I shied away from the question because it was a job that I literally fell into and was so grateful that someone gave me a job when I finished university. So it's kind of one of those where it was something that happened and I ended up staying there for, many years. And I credit it with a lot of life skills, a lot of skills, that I took away from it. I got to learn to manage people for the first time in my life, but it was never what I wanted to do and something that I was just grateful that someone had given me a job. I didn't know that I could do anything else. So it was there for what it was there for. And I think from that job, from quitting that job just on a whim one day with nothing else lined up, I then got to learn about myself, that I can not do anything, but I went into job after job after job, just doing these short-lived stints in jobs and adapting the skills that I'd learned in that job and over life to realizing that I could program a computer. I had a job as a computer programmer in some sense for a little while, and I'm not even into like tech stuff, but I applied myself and I was like, it made me just see how much more capable I was than I could ever know. So that's what I thank that job for. But I knew there's got to be more to life than what I was doing then.
Oh, absolutely. I thought you were one of those people that just, walk up and down the street, obviously as a property manager, but obviously looking to see who has parked that car and how long it's been parked there for and things of that nature.
I had staff for that, darling. I didn't move out of my seat.
Right. Now, Anita, you said you fell into this job. Were there any hopes when you were growing up of something that you wanted to do?
So this goes obviously back to what you were saying at the start, the nosy child that I was. So I got to a certain age where, and this was leading up to uni, I guess, where I thought I would love to do a psychology degree. The problem was that my grades were pretty shit in the subjects that needed the grades to qualify for a university degree in psychology. And so what I ended up doing a social science degree, which didn't have as much expectations, but obviously wasn't as, well, for me, it wasn't as beneficial as maybe a psychology degree was. So there was a sense that I wanted to do something in the people space, but I never really sat there and thought I want to be a psychologist. And it wasn't until I got my first therapist when I was 26 that when I was sitting there and I sat with her for 8 years every week, that's when I really knew I want to be in her chair and not in my seat. As much as I loved my seat, right, as well. I just used to look at her and I'd go around to her house. She'd have this little room and there'd be 2 chairs in it. And it was just nice. And I'd just go there and I'd cry. And I was there for 8 years. I'd be crying. I'd be laughing, whatever it was. And she wouldn't really say much, but she was like, she just listened mostly. This was the difference between what I found therapy was and now the type of coaching that I do. But it was this beautiful relationship that I had with her that was, someone to listen to you for that long and to not feel bad about talking for that amount of time and not asking. In 8 years, I didn't ask this woman one question. I knew nothing about her. And for me, the nosy one, as we know, to not do that it was quite freeing, because it was like I was giving myself permission to speak and be heard and not need to ask anyone about them. So that was when I really, in those 8 years, I was like, I want her job. But also I thought, I don't want to go back to university and study, because I was no good at studying in the traditional way. So as much as I thought that the psychology degree would be amazing, the academic side, I was diagnosed as dyslexic at a certain age, all of this stuff. And that the ironic thing was they would give me extra time in exams, and I didn't want I wanted less time. Because what I saw, and this is not to, I don't want to offend anyone in saying this, but for me, dyslexia was a disinterest. I was disinterested in the academic system. And so I chose not to apply myself to be good at reading, to be good at writing. I was wanting human, questioning. I wanted that side of things more than to sit there and read and write. So that's what I believe my dyslexia was on behalf of. And that's why I didn't need extra time in lessons. And I didn't really, enjoy uni from an academic perspective, but I loved it from a friendship and a people perspective. And my friends are still, my closest friends are still those people that I went to uni and to school with. So yeah, it was all about the people for me.
Oh, absolutely. Now I feel kind of safe because in the 8 years you didn't ask the therapist any questions. So if we sail through this one without any questions on your end, I'll be all right because yeah, like I said, I've been
As long
warned.
as you won't think I'm selfish for not asking you any questions. Oh, I just asked you one.
There it is. It's already started. So, and thank you so much for taking us through that. Now, would I be correct in saying that at age 10, when they were saying you're being too inquisitive, was it just the people around you that didn't know how to support you in the way that you would have wanted to interact with the world? Because some people would have wanted that you interact through books and reading, and that then doesn't bother them, whereas you wanted to actually speak and ask questions, and that was your way
Yeah,
of learning the world.
exactly. I love that. And this is the interesting thing because this is exactly the work that I do with people now. So I kind of generalize it as in people used to say, "Why are you so nosy?" But I have one memory of around 10 years old where one girl, and I can remember, as much as I can remember it, I remember who she was, the whole scenario. I was at boarding school and she asked me this. And that is what we call in this work, it's like a childhood message. So I only heard that once in childhood that I can remember, but it's enough for me to have generalized it and said that people used to say that to me. And that was on repeat in my mind for the rest of, the years that led up to. And for some people, as you said at the start there, it could be that I took that childhood message. I could have dumbed myself down because I could have seen that as a criticism, which it wasn't. She was just asking me, right? But instead, what I did was I heard it and yeah, it probably gave me some awareness that that's what I was doing. And it just brought me more into my awareness sphere and propelled me on to carry on, asking questions or whatever. But for some people, they may have got offended by it. So this is one of the childhood messages that I work with clients on. That was my childhood message. And there have definitely been people after that I remember saying that I'm quite nosy and ask a lot of questions. But that would have, those memories are later in life. So that one back then was the one that I really heard, and it didn't put me off. It probably just brought awareness to the fact that it wasn't maybe a normal thing to do. So
Mm,
yeah.
absolutely. Now, do you think this natural curiosity has been the thread that has actually been pulling you throughout your whole career? Because as you then elaborated, you said, in that 10 years, you kept, trying to figure out stuff and trying to find yourself in the process as well. Because some people would have just been complacent with who they were because, yes, the world
Sure.
seemed to be in order around them, but because
Exactly.
you kept asking those questions, is that what kept you
Yeah.
going? You right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say to you, pre-10, as we do as children, I was picking up from a very young age, young, like 2, 3, whatever we're talking here, 4, whatever it was. I was looking around the world from a very young age and seeing that people were not happy. I was looking around from a young age and seeing adults not being happy. And I don't know what age I was. It would have been small, pre-10, it would have been, as I know from the psychology of all of this stuff. I made a decision early on that I was going to try and be as happy as I could be. And I do believe that a lot of that questioning that I did was on behalf of trying to get some sort of formula of how to be a happy human being because I wasn't seeing happiness as I was looking out into the world. And this is where, because I know that about myself, and as I look at small kids, as I, throughout my life, I'm watching them now, and I'm watching how they are a lot more clever, emotionally intelligent, whatever we want to call it, than we think they are, and than us, because we have learned to forget who we really are at the core. And when we're those small little children, we are there taking in the world and figuring out, how do I manipulate love? Do I be the good girl? Do I be the bad girl, the attention seeker that still gets attention and love in a bit of a messed up way? Or do I people please? And this is happening. I'm watching my friends' kids at 2, 3 years old, maybe even younger already. That's where we're doing that. And all of that stuff is taking us out of the essence of us as we come into the world as pure beings. And then as soon as the mind starts to come online, we are looking at how we manipulate the world so that we get to feel like we belong and that we're loved. So my thing of there was, if I ask people questions, then I can maybe figure out this formula of how to be a happy human being. As well as if I ask people human beings questions and I'm interested in them, they're going to like me, because they're going to, this is how I'm going to get love as well in the world, because people want to be heard and they want to be seen. And I, from a young age, knew how to get people, to be heard and be seen. Ask them questions, express interest, shut the fuck up and listen to them. You don't need to be the one talking. Like, let's see this. And I would have been learning that from what I was watching, from adults around me for sure. So yeah, we are much more intelligent than we could ever realize as kids. We just don't remember it. We've been conditioned to forget. I'm not saying in a bad way, because we've been conditioned to, learn to live in this world, this crazy world, learn to read, learn to write, and all of that. But pre-verbally, we're probably at our most, kind of spiritually intelligent, aware, conscious, let's say.
You're absolutely right. And all of this is systemic, if we're to go there. And the very fact that you were, like you were saying, being given more time just so that you can complete something that doesn't interest you. Nobody was paying attention to what actually interests you so they can ignite your passions. That way you could live happier life. But since the whole system is set up in the way that it is, part of the system is to go to school, get a job, do everything else in that order. And especially if you're watching a TV show, that could happen in 35 minutes plus commercials, and people would still think that's how life is meant to be lived. So in part of what you were doing, you left the security of a steady job, which is part of the system. What was most scarier, the fear of failing or the fear of never trying?
Do you know what? I mean, there was never, failure's not really in my language, I guess. So failure wasn't an option, I guess, in that way. I think I just got to the point where I'd just come out of a long-term relationship, and I was with someone that it was lovely. It was a loving relationship. There was no, people talk about toxic relationships and all the rest of it. There was nothing other than two people that had grown in different directions, let's say. And it was very sad. I came to the end of that, and I was still working in this job, and I was like, I've just survived the end of a relationship that I thought was going to be the rest of my life. And I've survived. Yeah. And I'm okay. And then I asked myself, why am I still in this job that has become something that I'm quite stressed over, that I've stressed myself over, lots of anxiety, sleepless nights, corporate working life, hard. And I asked myself that question. I was like, why am I still here? If I survived the end of a relationship that was very loving and very great, why am I staying in a job that isn't very loving and very great? And that was kind of it. It was just a no-brainer. There was one night I remember waking up in the middle of the night, and I promised myself, if I ever woke up in the middle of the night worried about that job again, I would go in and quit the next day. And that's exactly what I did. And my boss was literally on the phone to me, and he went, I've been at this company for 11 years, right? My boss said to me, have you got anything else lined up? And I was like, no. And people, at that time, I would have never quit that job without anything else lined up. But this was just this moment that went, just do it. And I was like, no. And they were like, well, why don't you at least stay a few more months, a few more months longer until you get yourself set up with something? And I was like, no. Here's my notice period. I will be leaving then. And this is where it got interesting. That very day, the very same day, one of my old managers, my old boss in the same job from a few years ago, got in touch and said, do we know anyone that is looking for a part-time job? It's kind of doing the same thing, but in a smaller company. It's covering a maternity leave for just a few months, and it's only 4 days a week. You get every Friday off on the same day. And I said, yes, please. on the same day, I got a job that was flexible. This is it. It wasn't my next career, but it was like the safety and security of knowing I was going to earn the same money in 4 days. I was going to have every Friday off, and there was an end date on this job. And I took that job straight away. And this is where I mean, when I started to do other things, to step into different environments, I thrived. Whereas when I was in that job, I was like, I can never quit this job because I don't think I can do anything else or work for anyone else. I've done out of uni is this. And I went into that next company and they ended up keeping me on longer. You know, it was a few months. It was great. And during that time, I started to go on lots of holidays. I went on my first yoga retreat. I'd never done yoga. I'd never even stepped in. You know, I was living in London. I'd never stepped into any of the spiritual world. Then the next week, I went to Ibiza and completely undid all the good work of the yoga retreat. It's a party holiday. And then I ended up going to Bali. Yeah, so I went to Bali last minute. My girlfriends have been planning this holiday for a year. They kept saying, do you want to come? And I was like, not interested in Bali, not interested in Australia, not interested in that side of the world, no interest. I don't want to backpack, blah, blah, blah. It came to it and they were going in like 2 weeks and the job had finished. Yeah, the job had finished. And I was like, get another job or just go on holiday with the girls. It's 3 weeks. So I went with them and I just absolutely loved it. And I met loads of Australians when I was in Bali. Loads of Australian guys, right? So one day I was in the swimming pool and one of my friends looked at me and she went, you seem to like Australians, Anita. Why don't you go to Australia next? And I looked at her and I went, well, I've got nothing else to do. Go home and look for a job, pack up and go to Australia. So I went home, 6 weeks, found 2 jobs in that time, just did these random, another 2 jobs that I found randomly was very good at doing, you know, new stuff, saved up some more money. And then that was it. I went to Australia, packed up my case for a 3-month holiday. And that was 2014. And yeah.
It's almost 10 years ago. All right. Have you
It's more,
2025,
yeah. I went back after a few months because I was waiting for some stuff to happen. So I went home then, but then I stayed for another 8 years and I didn't go back to it. But I've been back now a few times in the last year and a half. So yes.
Absolutely.
But I was living in Bondi, right? I was literally there going, there's nowhere else to be. I have not had one holiday. I used to have 7 holidays a year when I worked in corporate, up to 7 holidays. I lived for my holidays. Then I moved to Bondi and I lived on holiday. I haven't worked a day since I quit the jobs back then. I have not worked in theory, even though I haven't. You know?
Okay, don't say that part out too loud because then we'll have a lot more people coming to Australia thinking that's what happens here, you know.
I don't know, not with all that's going on over there, all those protests and stuff. We won't go into that.
All right. Now, Anita, and you did mention that while you were in this job, you were holding on to it because you felt like that was the only thing that you were given an opportunity to do, and that was the only thing that you felt like you could do. Now, is this just an Anita thing, or does this happen to a lot of people who keep holding on to something because they are experiencing that little bit of happiness and they think that there won't be anything else outside of it? Because Bali did look good on you and I could still see the tan.
So this is where it comes to our personality types. This is part of the work that I do with people, is a personality typology. The one that I use is called the Enneagram, for those that have heard of it. Most people have maybe heard of Myers-Briggs. There's loads of different ones. The Enneagram is the one that I work to. And my personality type on the Enneagram is the loyalist, the type 6. Yeah. So the loyalist is the one that is too scared to change anything for fear of change. So they stay in their secure bubble of relationships, of jobs, of friendships, even if it's not serving them anymore, because the fear, the question you asked earlier, the fear of leaving is greater than the fear of staying, basically. Yeah. So as loyalists, we will hold on to whatever it is. And it was, it's the same thing. Like I said, I've got still my friends from school and from uni from 7 years old. That's a very typical trait of a loyalist. Like, hold on, because if they leave or if I leave, that's my security blanket gone. So if I leave this job of 11 years that I've worked in, I'm not, well, where am I going to get money from? Even though I had loads of money in the bank saved up, it was like, I can't leave this job. I won't get another job. So part of the loyalist is their worst case scenario thinkers, anxiety, future focus. So those with that sort of personality type will stay. Then you've got another personality type, which will run at the first sign of anything. Yes, there's different types. Like a type 7 is an enthusiast. They're constantly looking for change, adventure, and escaping reality. So they would be on the extreme. If I had that personality type, I probably would have stayed in that job not probably less than a year and moved on because it was boring, right? It was boring. I wasn't getting enough out of it. So I would have moved on. So it's like one is not better than the other. It's just seeing what's happened to us in childhood that has made us choose the personality types that we chose. And then that determines how we live our lives. So for me to have quit that job without anything lined up was me going totally against everything that I knew and I had lived by for all of those years. But it took something quite big for me to go, right, this is it now, I've had enough. Whereas I was thinking about leaving for years before that, but I just wouldn't. And the reality was that, as soon as I quit that job and I got that next one, I started doing new things. It was like, why did I not do this earlier? Look at all this. But it's the way it is. So that's it. The Enneagrams, it's a really great tool if people want to have a look into that. And it's not only the type 6s that would stay, there's different types that would stay. The loyalist is the one that will stay the longest, usually because of the deep wound of safety and security and not trusting the environment. But there are other types that would stay in things for longer and other types that would leave a lot quicker as well than say the type 7, the enthusiast. So that was it. So it's like, as soon as I started doing this work, when I got to Australia, I was like, oh, it makes so much sense. It all makes sense now, why I stayed for so long and what I have become, not what I was necessarily born as. There's different schools of thinking around this. Some people say that we already come into this life with our Enneagram intact. Others will say it forms within the first 7 years of our lives. So the way that I work with clients is whatever you remember, go with that. If you remember past lives and you remember what you came in with, that's fine. If your memories are more based on your childhood, then we go with that. So there's no rules with me on whether it's past life or, predetermined, or whether we come in with it and our childhood experiences determine the typology that we choose.
Now, how did you then land on human behavior coaching? Because obviously from all that you're saying, there's quite a lot to actually understanding the complex being.
Yeah. So what I did was that once I got to Bondi, I was hanging out with, I had a couple of friends that were already in this field and they were introducing me to more and more people. And so I, knowing this is what I loved to do. And I just finished my therapy with my therapist for 8 years. And there was a thing of going, I wonder what's next, because as much as I loved, all the talking that I did with her, I knew again, there's got to be more than this now. It felt like that was kind of done. I'd done that for 8 years. And it was like, what's next now? And then I started hanging out with all of these coaches. And a lot of them had studied at the place where I studied, the coaching room in Sydney, Melbourne. They run their courses. And a few of my friends had studied there, people I'd met. And they kept telling me about neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. Yeah, they'd done this course. And I was literally surrounding myself with these people. And I got there and I was like, there's me thinking that I need to go back and do a psychology degree in order to be able to work with people. And I'm here in Australia now, and there's all these people, and some of them ain't got any qualifications, right? You can be a coach. Anyone can be a coach, right? But I knew, as much as I knew I was really good at asking questions, I wanted some structure. I wanted to know, I wanted to go and train. So anyway, so I hung out with these people, and I learned a lot from a lot of, people I was hanging out with. And it wasn't until it probably took me a couple of years before I actually said, I'm actually going to invest now and do the course. Yeah. So I kind of just floated around for a bit, was on this holiday, I wasn't working. I was just, I had savings. I was living this life on Bondi Beach. I was offered a proper job, and I kind of tried that in property again. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm sitting behind a desk, even though I was in Bondi behind a desk. I wasn't looking at the ocean. I was like, what? And I could have gone round and they let me out and I could have gone and nosing in people's houses. That was the job, right? As a property job. And it was a really good opportunity in theory, but I wasn't there for that. I could have stayed in London and sat behind a desk. So I quit this job and I was told I was stupid to have done it. It's a great opportunity. And I was like, no, I want to be a coach. I want to work for myself and I want to work with people. I want to sit on that beach with another person. They're going to pay me money and we're going to coach, right? I was like, what a life. I don't want to work again. And so anyway, so I started studying the course. And I am going to say, it was a good, I mean, this doesn't seem a lot, but at the time, 2.5 years till I really started earning enough money to break even on paying my rent and affording my chai teas, right? So at the time, 2.5 years was a long time. Now, it's actually, when I look back, it was quite quick. When I look at some people who, they're struggling to make a living out of it and they've studied years and all the rest of it. So actually, it wasn't too bad. And I always knew with me, this is part of the personality type as well. I always wanted to, we talk about a work-life balance, right? So for me, it was like, I'm not here to be rich. I'm not interested. My biggest interest is to have enough, which I've always had. I've never wanted for anything. There's always been enough. I've never been rich, but there's always been enough. And I knew with this job, this didn't mean that I was going to be sitting in front of my laptop coaching people for 10 hours a day. I just wanted to work 10 hours a week. And that's been my life. There's never been more than really. There's been a little bit more some weeks, some weeks are more than others. But for me, a couple of hours coaching a day, 4 clients maximum a day is just perfect for me. And I knew that I wanted, I'm living on this beach, parts of my day talking, coaching people, and other parts of my day are out in on the beach and with friends. And I really believe that was the creation of, for me it was like a dream life. I didn't need holidays. I didn't go back to England. I didn't need to be anywhere else. It was, this was just perfect for me. So yeah.
Absolutely. It's just a permanent holiday, so to speak. I mean, I've been to Bondi Beach and it's just nice in that area there. But a lot of coaches, because we do end up working with a lot of coaches have money worries, especially when it comes to setting up a business, getting started, and you in a foreign country and all those things that are happening. And Bondi, party after party there, and there's always that. Even just
that's where the clients are.
It does cost money.
The parties, and I'm not joking.
Yeah. So how did you overcome the panic of what if this doesn't make money for you fast enough?
So I was obviously being coached, that doesn't end. So any distrust issues or whatever that were happening, it was coaching through it and seeing that the distrust and all the rest of it was a product of my conditioning, of my mind. And was there enough money in the bank to survive what I need? Yeah. There was all, it was lower than I wanted it to be. And I was like, a bit like, okay, we're getting into some serious savings here. But there is always coming back to the present moment. Have I got enough right here, right now? Do I want to do this as a job for as long as I can? As long as AI doesn't take over, right? I didn't know that then. But for as long as I can, right? And the answer was yes. So for me, there was no option in theory but to trust and to keep going. And that's like 101. If we are consistent and we really want it, I see the difference between successful coaches or, anyone in their own right. And when I say successful, I'm not talking about earning shitloads of money. I'm talking about making a career out of it and, being able to live on what they're making. For me, success isn't being the richest coach in the world. I don't, for me, that's not a thing. The success is in having enough. That's all it comes down to, is having enough. And most importantly, the greatest success for me, whether we make it as a coach or we don't, is the work that we have learned from doing the courses and the work on ourselves. That's the greatest success. And that doesn't mean I'm going, oh, you're a homeless person. But even if you are homeless on the street, if your mind's all right, if you're all right with it, you might be better off than a billionaire. It doesn't matter. There's the success. And that was always the thing for me. It was always, it was kind of this thing where I would sit there and I would go, okay, maybe I am going to have to go back to London and get a job, or maybe I'm going to have to, go back to an office. And there was just something in me that wouldn't allow myself to do it, and just kept on and on, giving free sessions, doing just doing whatever I needed to do, advertising free stuff all the time. People go, no, you can't advertise it for free. And I'm like, of course you can. It's going to come back around at some point. If we just sit there going, I'm only going to charge $500 a session, even though I've only just started. And if no one pays me that, I'm just going to sit here and do nothing. It's like, no, you pay me $50 if that's all you've got or whatever. And that's what I would do. I was literally at the point where I wasn't valuing. This is the difference. People will go, if I don't charge that, it means I'm not worthy. And that is dangerous, because now we're placing our worth on this constructed thing called money. And now I'm not worthy if I give someone a free set. If I sit with someone and give them, if they get some real value out of this conversation, if they walk away from this conversation and they're not going to kill themselves, or they're going to do something really positive, but they've not paid me, but that's the thing that we do. If I'm not getting paid for this, that means I'm a nobody, because money determines my value. And that's where it can get dangerous, rather than going, right, I've had a great conversation, I feel really good that they feel good. There's value, right? And so for me, it was consistency. And when we said about the parties in Bondi and all the rest of it, so I went from London to a life of, binge drinking at the weekends, all the rest of it, coming to Bondi, stopping drinking. I haven't drunk for years. There's Bondi drinking, and then there's the spiritual side of Bondi in theory as well. And that was where I was going. I didn't need drink anymore. I didn't need parties. Yeah, they kind of dwindled out as well. I was studying. This work that I was doing on the mind was 100 times more important than going to a party anymore. It completely took over. And so when I would go to parties, I'd end up in the corner with someone, and they'd end up maybe as a client by the end of the night. I would sit in cafes all day, every day in Bondi, talking to people. What are you doing, Anita? And I'd be like, I've just done this course. It's amazing. I'm not selling, but I was selling because that's how I would get clients. So when you said about the startup costs of being a coach, I didn't have any startup costs. I had a laptop, I had my mouth, I had the beach, and I had a towel. Come and sit with me on the beach. I didn't spend any money on advertising. I didn't have it to spend. I was like, this is, so how can I make this happen without spending any money? And even to this day, I don't spend money on advertising. I haven't done yet. I haven't needed to. But I know with that, it's because I sell myself very well. It's kind of like, and not everyone can. So I understand why people do. But my thing is, I meet someone, they used to go, you've got a business card? I'd say, no, but here's my Instagram. Because never mind a business card, I had a box full of business cards that never got looked at again. Here's my Instagram. I would remember the conversation we'd had, and I would create a post, and I'd be selling through what conversations have I had? What do those people that I've met today, my potential clients, need to hear? And that's what I would do. I'd create posts, and I'd post every day. And that's how I'd get clients. People would come through from that. There's not a big following, but it was only enough that one post would get a couple of likes, but it might be that person that I was targeting that liked that post that was then going to be a client, and might have become a client shortly after that.
Absolutely. I like so much of what you said in that sort of response, because so many people, peg their worth based on their bank account. And that doesn't necessarily mean what you're doing is not valuable to the people that you're actually helping do and have a happier existence. And also the thing about social media is you're not creating for the 2 or 3 billion or 7 billion people that Instagram has. You're just creating for the community that you're building, and you were doing the absolute best in that particular time. But all of this comes from a lot of learning and trying and putting it all together, and just making sure that you're getting it right, so that at least, you're not going backwards when you're supposed to be going forwards. But learning is the operative word here. What then became different? Because you introduced us to a younger Anita who didn't like a lot of learning at the start. And what was the difference now with this type of learning?
Because there was never a subject at school called human behaviour. So that was the difference, right? And then also, so the courses that I did, they were how I learned coaching, the skill of coaching, to ask the questions. I'd already learned that, right? Because I was nosy. But so what I would do is I would go to courses, and how I learned was I was watching coaches coach. I wasn't sitting there. So I've not read any books. People go, "Oh, can you recommend me a book?" I'm like, "No, because I haven't got any. But go on this course, because that's the only recommendation I've got is the course." Because I went on that course 20 times. You did it once, you got it for free for like. I kept going, and even now I still go on the course 8 years later. And so how I learn is I sit there and I watch them, and I watch them coach, and I watch the emotion. So I learn through visual and feeling. And so as I would watch them coach, and I would watch them, the person sitting with them would start to cry, and I would just have all the feels, and that would anchor in how to coach. That's how they got them crying. They asked them that question. I would watch them start to point out, when your eyes go up there, what's going on for you there? When your leg moves, it wasn't that body language thing that you do this, so that means that. It was, you've just moved something, your arms just moved, or you've just burped, something's happening, what's going on for you? Not telling them what was going on, asking them. And I would watch that, and I was just like, these are master. Like, it was just the skill of it. It was so different from body language. If you cross your arms, it means they're being defensive, all that bullshit. It was, when you cross your arms, tell me what's going on for you. And they'll go, "Oh, I'm cold. Yeah, I'm just cold. I'm, doing this. I'm not defensive. They're cold, right?" Or I heard a girl once saying that she crossed her arms because she didn't want men looking at her chest. And we would go, she's defensive. So in a sense, it's defensive. But what is it about? It's because she doesn't want people looking, so it's like not telling people what they're doing, asking them. And I would just sit there and watch this, and I would just be in awe of it. And because I felt there was so much feeling around the excitement and the joy and the tears, that's what anchored it in, rather than me sitting there reading a book, which the theory of it. So the theory kind of got learned in the background, but it was more around just watching through the emotions of humans that I really learned. That was the difference. Teach me that at school, and I would have been there all day, every day with top marks, right? I wouldn't have needed extra time or, whatever. I would have needed less time anyway, because I'd have, smashed it quickly. And this is the interesting thing, right? So as I look at it now, it's like, when I look at a lot of my friends at school that were like the straight A students, and I was like the not so, and a lot of my close friends were really straight A's, and just like looking at, it's really nice to see that back then it was like, I may never get a job, I may just be like living on benefits for my life, because I don't know how I'm going to get a job because I'm so shit at school. To then coming to kind of this sort of work and going, I'm the straight A student in theory that I used to look at my friends being, whilst they were studying stuff, I was studying people. So I was studying alongside them, but no one was marking me on what I was studying. And that the benefits of that got reaped, into my 30s, basically. That's when it came good. And it was like, I'm actually now getting paid to just be me. That's to be me, right? I'm now getting paid to be the nosy person that I've always been, but I'm actually getting paid for it now, And that was it. It was like, going, yes.
Oh, absolutely. Now, if somebody's watching this, especially those straight A students, I mean, obviously, if they level up, then they can be allowed to speak on the online prosperity show. But they might just, brush this off, Anita, and say, so she just people watches then, because that's what it sounds like. You're just sitting at the beach watching people crossing their arms, or, is that what human behavior coaching is all about then?
It seems it, but it's but this is it, right? Do you know what my favorite ones are? Once you go to them, well, I mean, you can earn like, $1,000 an hour doing this, as some do. I'm not saying I do, but some do, right? They'll go out and charge that because that's, whatever's needed in that. And anyway, but it's like, well, yeah, if you're just literally sitting there watching people and you're getting paid $1,000 an hour, I reckon those straight A students are going to be all right up there.
Absolutely. But I mean, obviously, this is something that you've started doing not only for yourself. What's been the sort of most rewarding breakthrough that you've done for somebody else, maybe a client, or one that just really got you to step back and think, yeah, this is now what I should be doing for the rest of my life? I mean, you don't have to go into specifics, but if you can just
That's a
maybe
good
show us
question,
that
actually.
this works on
Yeah.
other humans.
Yeah, there's so many, I guess. There's a lot of things. Do you know what the thing? This for me, the ones that I hold the closest to me are the ones where I've had the most difficult human beings. Yeah, so they're the ones that. So this is the way I see it. With a lot of human beings, regardless of whether they're coaches or not, they prefer to work with people that are easy to work with. Whereas for me, I'm interested in the most difficult human beings around. I'm literally like, give me Hitler. Like, I want to know. I want to sit with this. But this is it. And this is, if I get someone that is difficult, let's say they're difficult, they struggle a bit in the world, they struggle with relationships and all the rest of it. I want to be the one that, as difficult as it is to be with them, I want to be the one that they feel understood by. And that for me is the most rewarding. And that can look like having a difficult relationship potentially for a while. Coaching sessions can be a bit icky. And I can literally go away from them going, what am I doing? Why am I signing up to this? Why do I want the difficult humans? But I think if the most difficult humans in the world could be seen and understood, even in their shitty behavior and their difficulties, them being seen in the world for their difficulties and someone having compassion for them is what will help them to become better people, let's say. So for me, I know a lot of people don't want to touch difficult humans, whereas I'm like, there's got to be someone or some people that want to help those people. And that for me is the most rewarding, where I've got someone to be able to open up to me, to sit with me, to argue with me, but to still remain in a good relationship where even though we've had some hardships, we are able to come round and see that I can see that there's some stuff going on, but I still understand you. Doesn't mean that I necessarily agree with what they've done, but I can understand that they've had some real trauma happen in their life that has brought them into shitty behaviors. It doesn't mean they're shitty humans. And I think that is, and I'm going to say this now, this is the ending of world wars. Yeah, because what we're warring, we ain't warring each other. We're not warring with our power, money. We're not warring that. We're warring our childhood traumas. And we're clashing our thinking structures, our feeling structures, our childhood experiences. That's what we're clashing. And that's what is killing millions of people. And what's going to end, human suffering in this way is by understanding each other, understanding the person that's done. And I know this is hard to hear, but the person that's done some really bad, if we can sit there and have some compassion, understand them, that is the way out of them potentially being, shitty in their behaviors. And so for me, that is, if I can sit with someone and we can go through a process like that and come good by the end of it, that for me is the most rewarding part of this job. Give me the people that no other coach wants to coach, That's it.
You know what I like about that is you're absolutely right. I mean, with anything, there's always the 80-20 rule. There's 80% of people that will go in coachable and do the right thing and everything else, but there's, like you say, the extreme 20% that nobody's actually listening to or paying attention to. Those are the ones that then end up on the front page of the newspaper having done something, and then we start paying attention, but it's a little too late.
Exactly.
But I once heard somewhere while we were investigating you that you once joked that sometimes you wonder whether to coach or to date someone that you meet. I mean, you can't go on fixing everyone. It will be very, very impossible. But does humor help you create rapport with people? Because these people are, if we say they're in that extreme sort of place and they're probably about to do something to hurt others or hurt themselves, how do you then make yourself safe? Oh, and how does humor play into all of this? Because then that's the reason why nobody wants to touch them.
So that again, humor, did you say?
Yes. You know, from what I've been gathering, you have this humor around you that helps you deal with difficult things or difficult scenarios. Is that what
Yeah.
is that how you break the pattern with people?
Yeah, yeah. And it's you know, the more humor we can bring to it, the more we can lighten it. It's not for everyone. Some people are like, I've just told you something really important and you're laughing, because I do. That's one of my things. But I think there's this thing where, and this is not to, you know, discount anything that's going on for anyone, but we can get so serious at times that to kind of try and bring some lightness to things and go like, this is something that offends quite a lot of people, but I'll say it anyway. It's like, humor is to be able to go, I'm a narcissist and I own that. Yeah, I'm selfish and I own that. And that's, you know, people come into coaching and they're like, someone's called me really selfish or they've called me a narcissist and all the rest of it, and I'm like, and what's wrong with that? And they're like, well, I'm not a narcissist, they're a narcissist and all the rest of it. And I'm like, well, if we can start to see that we are all doing everything, and this sounds harsh, but we're all doing everything that we do for our own benefit, even if we're being really nice and really giving, it's usually coming from a narcissistic wound during childhood where we wanted to be people pleasers so that we got love. So as human beings, we are all narcissistic. And if we can just go, you know, so someone says it to me and I'm like, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I like looking after myself. That's the way of ending shit, right? Because you're now not defending and they're not going to start attacking because you just go, yeah, I own it. So it's like I say to my clients, I'm just own it. What's wrong with owning it? Like, what are you going to get so offended by? And the thing that we get so offended by is our conditioning, which tells us we can't be selfish. It doesn't teach us that being selfish, putting your own gas mask on first, you know, you and Kim were talking about this. Yeah. Putting your own gas mask on first is being selfish, is being a narcissist. You're doing that for yourself over everyone else. Why? So that you are now better. You've got some gas, you've got some air coming in. Now you've done your narcissistic, selfish part. Now you can be more selfless because you've got the capacity to now be selfless from a really authentic, genuine way because you're getting the air come in. And now you can give.
Yeah,
Yeah. So if someone goes, oh, you're being really selfish, it's like, yeah, I am. And just have a little laugh about it. What are they going to say? Like, really, this is the stuff that can diffuse things quite quickly.
oh,
So it's like, drop a bit of humor in. Let's not take it all so seriously and see what can happen.
oh, absolutely. Now, if somebody's watching this and obviously really would like to learn a little bit more or get in touch with you to find out how you can be of help to them, first of all, where can they go on the internet or how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So my name, obviously, you'll see it there, Anita Tomecki. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn as well. Feel free to find me there. Drop me a personal message. If you want, I always offer people a free conversation. If anyone wants to have a chat, ask me any questions. Inquire into, you know, anything that we talked about just now. Love to have a conversation. So yeah, find me on the socials and drop me a line. Drop me a follow if that's what you want to do.
Cool stuff. You okay with us putting all those links in the show notes below, right?
Yes, perfect. Yes.
Great stuff. Now, obviously, Anita, when we started this conversation, you introduced us to 10-year-old Anita, who obviously was a detective in training, and that became the label that became a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think a lot of people are given certain labels, and some of them are not as good, and then they become that when they do grow up. Now,
Yeah.
if from what I'm hearing, a lot of the human behavior is healing that inner child and making sure that that inner child is now given, is made safe. That's how you say wars would sort of end. If
Yeah.
if you would then maybe go back to younger Anita, to that time when you were told stop asking too many questions, what would you tell her right now, since you're still, like you say, observing kids, and if you see a kid that's being told that, what would you tell that little girl?
Keep asking questions.
Mm.
Even more so, I would, if I was there with a child that I could see was suffering something, I would ask them questions, of course. Yeah. So this is there's one thing to tell them something, but it's another thing to understand them. So as that person said to you, you're asking too many questions, you're nosy. How did you feel when they asked you that? And then you start getting into the workings of the mind of a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 10-year-old, an adult. That's what I do. What I do in my work is ask questions, and it gets people thinking about stuff they've never thought of before, because normally we're just told, or assumptions are made about us. But when you actually ask people questions, a lot of the time when I'm coaching people, I'll ask them questions. Their answer will be automatically, I don't know. So where did that start? What's that? I don't know. I don't know. I don't. And I go to them, if you could know something, what might you know? And there's an answer straight away. Straight away, usually there's an answer. And I'm like, what made you say I don't know? And then answer it the second time. And it's usually, this is where we go into the programs of the mind, there's distrust running. And there's such a habit of being distrustful of themselves that they automatically, without even considering the answer, I don't know, I don't know. And it's very rare that someone, you ask them twice, they say, I don't know. What if you could know? That they'll keep going, I don't know. Very rare. It's very common for people to suddenly then have an answer. But how often are we asked twice? Most people will ask something, the person will go, I don't know, and then you move on with the conversation. So they've never had a chance to reflect. Ask them again, what if you could know something? Now you're getting them to go into their psyche a little bit further than just the automatic, I don't know. Now they're going in. Well, it could be. And now they're actually processing it rather than just the habit of saying, I don't know. They're like that. You see them processing, they're looking up. And then they come out with their answer. So what stopped you from saying that the first time? And usually we get to, because they don't trust that their answer was the right answer, was good enough, was what they really meant to say. And this is this work. It's not only asking once, but it's maybe asking a few times and going deeper rather than just moving on after someone says, I don't know.
And from what you're saying, it does sound like school is doing a disservice for a lot of people. And they obviously, with school, you're supposed to say the right answer. And if you don't, the teacher moves on to the other kid, and that becomes a natural response, so that you don't ask me, you ask somebody else who might be aware of what's happening. So if somebody has that default, oh, I don't know, or I don't know, or whichever accent they're using, ich weiß es nicht, if they're watching right now and they feel stuck in their life or their career, in their family, their relationships, their wealth, their health, what's the very first question that maybe they should be asking themselves today in order to get themselves to that second question? Because the world is not going to ask them the second question. But if somebody could ask themselves that second question, do you have like a...
Yeah, well, exactly what they could ask themselves. What if I could know something? And what they could do as well as that is take a deep breath and allow the breath to come all the way down to their gut and not try and think their way into it. And if something arises from that, trust the gut. Yeah. What I would also say is, if you don't have an answer right here and now, stop trying to find an answer right here and now. Trust your answer will find you, or you will find it when the moment is right. So we don't need more time to make a decision. We need more information. So you're sitting there and you're going, like me, should I leave this job for 3 years? Should I leave this job? Should I not? You know, in out, should I leave it? Should I not? Then one day there was a moment where I woke up in the middle of the night. I was having a sleepless night over this job. And I didn't even have to ask myself anything other than I know I'm handing my notice in tomorrow. And in that moment, the information presented itself of me having a sleepless night over this job again. There was the information. I've woken up. I said I wouldn't do this again. And I went in and quit my job the next day. The information presented itself in the moment for me to make that decision. I didn't need to look for it. So if you have a decision that you're trying to make and you don't have an answer, put it down, leave it alone, and trust the answer will present as the information presents itself.
I like that. I like that. You see, when I was growing up, Anita, I was always told that this is not six-pack abs. It's an actual brain. That's why it's got grooves, just like the brain that you actually have. So many people just need to understand that aspect. Thank you so much.
And this is the difference. Just quickly, sorry, the difference is when we say I don't know, when I say that, it's like people are being asked a question and it's coming down to here and it's just shooting out. I don't know. I don't know. The difference is allowing this to come down to your gut rather than just here, head to mouth. Allow it to come out of head, down to the gut, led by your breath, and trust whatever comes from that. And that's, you know, it will be whatever it is for the person.
I like that. It's like people are choking their own progress.
Yes.
I mean, sorry to use that sort of visual.
No, it's true. Yeah, it's true.
Great stuff.
And the third part to that is if you don't know, then just contact me on social media and I'll have a chat with you. Get a good coach, get a good human behavior expert helping you out, right?
Well, now that you've brought us into your world, Anita, what's next? What are you working on that we can be excited and celebrate or be on the lookout for now that, you know, we now know we need to be watching you?
Just keep watching. There's no plan. There is only now. And there's nothing to come. It's all already here. So that's the way I live, very differently. I don't have a million programs to sell or anything like that. It's literally like any bit of work that I've done over this time, any workshop, any of the rest of it, it's organized usually, you know, days, a couple of weeks ahead of time or whatever. It's, you know, there's not a lot of planning. And I can honestly say that through trusting the process of this over the 8 years of doing this work, it's been consistent. Yeah. And it's not sitting down in front of a computer all day planning my next whatever. It's, you know, as I said before, it's selling myself on the streets, however it works, you know, meeting people at parties, you know, the stories I've got of how clients have found me has just been not through, you know, lots of planning and there's a trust here that I'm not sitting on my ass doing nothing, but there's stuff that's just happening through the happening of me wherever I may turn up and, you know, people I meet and places I go. And yeah, that's it. There's another podcast maybe coming in a few days time or whatever, you know, stuff that got booked in a few days ago, and that's how I roll. So
absolutely. Now I know that was the last question, but you brought up something there that obviously is just going to be value for the person that's watching. So the Anita of the property management days, if she met the Anita of today, would she believe that this is the life that you now live?
No. Crazy. That Anita thought, I mean, if you know, I booked my trip to Australia 6 weeks before I came, right? And it's, you know, 10 years. No, I mean, you know, a few months before that, I was in a long-term relationship thinking I would be in that job till retirement, in that relationship till I die. You know, not that there was anything, you know, vastly wrong, but I could never imagine this life. Like, no way, absolutely no way. No, as I said, no plan. It was just one thing: swimming pool, Bali, Australia, getting to Australia, loving it, staying, you know, all of that. It's just there was no grand plan of any of it.
Oh, so well, thank you so much. What a powerful conversation. I mean, you've just shown us that it's the questions we ask ourselves that can actually change everything about the life that we live. What if What if? And I think this is one of those things that a lot of people have been afraid to ask themselves, those types of questions, because they don't know what's on the other side. But like you have elaborated, you just 6 weeks jumped on a plane, trip with the girls, ended up in a whole different country, and look at you now. And what that all teaches me is whatever you're going through or whatever is going on in your life, you should actually be paying attention, because one day you'll have a good story to tell on the online prosperity show, just like what Anita has.
Exactly. That's what I'm here for. This was it all the time.
Absolutely. So, for those that are watching right now, if you've been triggered, inspired, or maybe even laughed at the idea of, I don't know, dating your coach or watching people at the airport, well, here's your next step. Reach out to Anita for that one-to-one coaching, or join her next workshop. I'll be putting all those links in the show notes below. It could just be the beginning of the shift that you didn't know you needed. And before you go, I'm encouraging you to maybe share this video with somebody who's stuck. You might know someone who is stuck in their job, stuck in a relationship, stuck in. Just send this video to them, no questions asked. They'll come back and thank you for having shown them that life is possible if you just ask yourself the right questions. And it might actually help them shift, their perspective and things of that nature. And if somebody has shared this with you, the next time you see them, just give them a big, big hug, and be sure to reach out to Anita, because she might actually have a story or two which she obviously would not have been able to say on the show today. And I just want you to remember one thing: the right question at the right time to the right person could actually start your breakthrough. I don't know what you're going to do with this information today. Bye for now.